The dial tone still buzzed as I called my daughter for her birthday. Third year in a row, she let it ring. Still holding the phone, I looked at the bill I'd been quietly paying since she was 19. As the clerk at the store pulled up the account, her name sat there bold as brass: user, not owner. While he asked if I was sure, I nodded once. The same way I used to when she skipped curfew and swore I was overreacting. The same daughter who stopped calling never thought I'd stop carrying the line. That's when I disconnected it, because motherhood shouldn't come with a subscription fee. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The wind off Lake Nokomis raked dry leaves across the patio as Lena Barrett pressed her phone to her ear, waiting for the voicemail beep like someone listening for the last train of the night. "Hi, honey. Happy birthday," she began, her voice steady but softened by something more fragile underneath. "Just wanted to hear how your day is going. I imagine it's busy. I hope it's good." A pause. "Anyway, I love you." She ended the call and set the phone down gently on the kitchen counter, beside a small frosted cupcake she'd bought from the corner bakery, Rachel's favorite when she was younger. Vanilla bean with raspberry filling. The candle stood unlit. Outside, the lake shimmered in the mid-October light, cool and indifferent. She didn't expect a call back. Not really, but she still kept the phone on loud, just in case. 2.5 weeks passed. Leaves went from gold to rust. The cupcake went hard and dry inside its little plastic dome, but Lena didn't throw it out. It sat on the sill, a tiny monument to silence. She sent 3 texts over that time. One with a funny photo of a squirrel flattened against her window screen. Rachel used to love those. Another with a question about a box of her things in the basement. The third was just, "Hope you're okay." Each one left unread. On a Saturday afternoon, Diane Holloway clomped in wearing boots dusted with mulch and sarcasm. "Still nothing from Rachel?" she asked before her coat was even off. Lena didn't answer right away. She poured coffee instead, hands steady but her shoulders too still. Not even a "thanks for the message." It's been 5.5 months since I actually heard her voice. Diane took the mug and gave a dry laugh, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "You sure you didn't raise an orphan who stole your kid's name and social security number?" Lena smiled weakly. "If so, she's doing a better job at avoiding me than the IRS." They sat at the table in silence, the kind only old friends can share without discomfort. Diane looked around the downsized condo. Minimalist, organized, nothing like the chaos of a house once filled with school projects, and mother-daughter shouting matches over curfews and missed curfews. "You still writing those cards?" Lena hesitated, then rose and opened the drawer near the hutch. Inside, rows of unused holiday cards, birthdays, Mother's Days, congratulations, for promotions that were never mentioned, milestones never shared. Each one sealed and addressed, but never sent. Some had stamps already on them. The most recent she slid out and opened, to Rachel, "With love always." Diane looked over her glasses. "You going to keep pretending she'll change?" "I don't know what I'm doing," Lena admitted. "I guess it just feels wrong not to try." She put the card back gently. The drawer closed with a soft click. Later that evening, Lena sat with her tea and scrolled through the quiet brightness of her phone screen. She shouldn't have opened Instagram, but her thumb moved on instinct. Rachel's latest post was front and center. A filtered brunch photo, mimosa flutes clinking, sunlit hair glowing, 3 laughing women leaning in across a table of perfect avocado toast. Caption: "Best daughter day ever." Lena blinked. She enlarged the photo. None of them were her. None of them were family. Just curated smiles, performative affection, borrowed intimacy. She set the phone face down. the air around her suddenly too thin. Outside, a boat engine whined in the distance, fading into nothing. She stared out the window, but it was her own reflection she saw first. Soft silver hair tucked behind her ears, eyes rimmed with something unshed. She picked up the cupcake at last, walked it to the trash, and stood there for a moment too long before lifting the lid. Then she returned to the table, opened her laptop, and typed one word into the search bar. Phone account transfer. She pressed enter. The fluorescent lights inside the Midtown phone store flickered faintly, casting a cold, sterile glow across the rows of tech displays and matte black counters. Lena Barrett stood at the service desk, her hands folded around the strap of her purse, waiting while the young woman behind the screen typed rapidly with short, chipped nails and quiet efficiency. Amy, the name on her badge read. 20-something, wearing a cozy forest green cardigan over her uniform polo, and a look of tired patience that had likely hardened from too many angry customers. But when she looked up at Lena, her expression softened. "Okay, Ms. Barrett, I've pulled up your account." She squinted at the screen. "Looks like there's a primary line, yours, and one additional under a user named Rachel Barrett. That your daughter?" Lena nodded once. "Yes." Amy clicked again. "Looks like the account was opened under your name back in 2008. Been active since then. No co-signers, no transfer requests ever submitted." "No co-signers," Lena echoed quietly, mostly to herself. Amy tilted her head as if reading more from Lena's face than from the screen. "What would you like to do today?" "I want to remove the secondary line, the one assigned to Rachel." Amy paused. "Just to be clear, this'll disconnect the number permanently. It won't forward. No backup or grace period. She'll lose everything tied to that line." "I understand," Lena said. Her voice was calm, flat but deliberate. "I only need one line from now on." Amy gave a small nod. "All right. I'll just need to verify a couple things before we process." Lena handed over her ID, tapping her fingers gently against the counter as Amy worked through the form. Outside the window, traffic moved slowly through the gray afternoon. A light drizzle had started. People walked by with umbrellas angled against the wind, hurrying to get somewhere dry. Amy glanced up. "You sure she doesn't need time to back anything up? This will impact two-factor authentications, banking, login recovery." "She's had years to secure her life," Lena replied, her tone quiet but immovable. "She just didn't think I'd ever stop underwriting it." The clacking keys stopped. Amy looked at her for a long second, something shifting in her gaze. Curiosity replaced by something softer. "You're the full owner. That means you can do this any time. I'm just making sure you know what it means." "I do," Lena said. Amy nodded again and resumed typing. "Okay. Disconnection will process immediately. She won't get a separate notice. It'll just stop working." Lena said nothing as Amy clicked submit. A small confirmation window popped up on the monitor between them. Line disconnected. The silence in the store pressed in for a beat too long. Amy exhaled and turned the screen slightly to show Lena the final status. She was just listed as the user, never the owner. A small smile crept across Lena's face. Not smug, not cruel. Just settled. Like someone finally stepping outside after being indoors too long. "I know," she said. Amy hesitated. "Most people don't check. They assume things are shared." Lena looked up at her then, meeting her eyes. "That's the problem, isn't it? We give without asking who's really holding the reins." Amy gave a quiet, admiring chuckle. "You sound like someone who worked in telecom." 32 years, Lena replied. "I built lines people forgot were there." They both smiled then. Two women, a generation apart, linked by something unspoken and deeply understood. As Lena zipped her coat, Amy printed the final receipt and handed it over. If she tries to call customer service, she won't have any account access. Just a heads up. She'll find that out soon enough, Lena said, slipping the receipt into her purse. She stepped outside into the rain without opening an umbrella. Back in the store, Amy watched her disappear down the sidewalk, the drizzle streaking faintly across the glass. She didn't know the full story, but she recognized the look of someone drawing a line in permanent ink. Inside Lena's coat pocket, her phone buzzed, a text from Rachel. "Hey, my service is down. Did something happen?" Lena didn't open it. She simply tucked the phone deeper into her pocket and kept walking, as behind her, the signal faded. Rachel Barrett woke to the high-pitched whine of a dead phone trying to find a signal. She blinked, confused, then squinted at the screen. No service. The apartment was dark, half lit by a narrow beam of morning light cutting through the blinds. She tapped the screen again. Nothing. She tried toggling airplane mode, off, on, off again. Still no bars. "Jason?" she called, her voice still scratchy from sleep. She slid out from beneath the linen duvet, her bare feet hitting the cold floor of their industrial loft. Jason was already in the kitchen, making coffee, scrolling his own phone. "You up?" "I think my phone's broken," she said, holding it out. "It's not loading anything. No signal." Jason took it, tried the same steps she had, then shook his head. "Could be the tower. Want me to hotspot you?" "No," she said sharply, then softened her tone. "I'll just stop by the store on the way to the meeting." But a flicker of something crossed her face. Hesitation. That's when it started sinking in. No Instagram notifications, no Slack pings, no morning texts from her team. She pressed the power button again. Nothing had changed. By noon, Rachel was standing in line at the downtown phone store, pacing, her nerves frayed. The digital clock behind the counter ticked forward, each minute stretching her anxiety tighter. When her turn came, a man in a slate-colored polo waved her over. "What can I help you with?" "I woke up with no service," she said, sliding her phone across the counter. "It's not a hardware issue. I need to know what's going on." He took it, scanned the barcode on the back, and typed a few lines into the terminal. "Let me check the account details." Rachel folded her arms. "It should be under Rachel Barrett." More typing. His brow furrowed. "Okay," he said slowly. "Looks like this line was recently disconnected." Rachel leaned forward. "Disconnected? What do you mean disconnected?" "Yeah, it says here the account holder requested the cancellation yesterday. Line was deactivated immediately." She stared at him. "There must be some mistake. I am the account holder." He double-checked the screen. "Actually, it lists Lena Barrett as the account owner. You're listed as the user, not the owner." Rachel blinked. "No," she said flatly. "That's not right. I've had this number since college." "That might be true, but the account itself is in Lena Barrett's name. She would have been the one with administrative access." "Are you kidding me?" Rachel's voice edged higher. She leaned across the counter. "So you're telling me my own mother shut off my number?" The rep hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I'm just relaying what the system says." Rachel stood still, her mouth slightly open, hands at her sides. For a moment, the buzzing of fluorescent lights and distant customer chatter blurred into a dull hum. She felt like she was underwater. She snatched the phone back, her grip white-knuckled. "Can you reactivate it?" He shook his head. "Only the account owner can do that." She turned abruptly and left the store, heart pounding, each footstep on the tile louder than the last. Once outside, she dug into her purse, pulling out Jason's spare phone, the one they used for hotspotting on road trips. She scrolled through the contacts and dialed Lena, straight to voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. On the third attempt, she didn't bother leaving a message. She was already texting Jason. "It was my mom. She disconnected me." Three dots appeared, then vanished. Inside the lobby of her startup's co-working space, Rachel stood motionless beneath the LED buzz of the startup's branded sign, Disrupt, Build, Scale. But her world had just been unplugged, and no pitch deck or platform could fix it. Her screen lit up. No service. Emergency calls only. And below it, a calendar reminder pinged faintly. Mom's birthday, missed. She hadn't called. She hadn't texted. She'd posted brunch. Rachel swallowed hard and stared at the blank screen as if it might change its mind. It didn't. Rachel sat on the edge of her velvet couch, legs crossed tightly beneath her, the afternoon sun slicing across the loft like judgment. Jason had left for a client meeting after a long, quiet stare she hadn't asked him to explain. The loft felt cavernous without the buzz of her phone. No pings, no vibrations, just her, and the cold echo of silence. She stared at Jason's spare phone, thumbs hovering over the screen. Drafted, deleted, started again. Hey Mom, what's going on? Did something happen with the phone plan? I woke up without service. Please tell me it was a mistake. I've had this number for over a decade. Can we just talk? She hesitated, then added, I don't know what I did, but I'd like to fix it. Then hit send. The three blinking dots never came. An hour later, in her lakefront condo, Lena stood by the window watching geese glide across the water. The phone buzzed once. She picked it up, read Rachel's message, and felt no hesitation at all as she typed, I stopped paying for people who don't speak to me. She hit send, then powered the phone off, just for a minute of clean air. Diane let herself in 15 minutes later, tossing her coat over the back of a dining chair and sniffing the air. Something smells righteous in here. Did you finally pull the plug on the golden goose? Lena held up her phone. She texted. I told her the truth. Diane's eyes lit up. What did you say? Lena handed her the phone. Diane read the message once, then twice, then laughed so hard she had to sit down. Oh my God, she gasped. You actually said it. You finally said it. I don't know why that's so funny. Because it's perfectly brutal, that's why. Quiet as a hammer to the kneecap. Lena allowed herself a small, amused exhale. Then she took the phone back and placed it face down. Meanwhile, Rachel was pacing the length of the loft, Jason's spare phone glued to her hand. She'd already been to the carrier website. She tried opening a new line. Identity verification failed. Tried a different email. Account history tied to shared plan. Call customer support. She did. Waited 34 minutes on hold. Got bounced between departments. Sorry, Ms. Barrett, but because the previous account was family-based, there's a delay in reassigning access. Your credit file is still linked to the original plan holder. Which was me, Rachel snapped. No, ma'am, the rep corrected politely. You were just a dependent user. The primary account holder controls authorization, and unfortunately, she denied the transfer request this morning. Rachel's voice thinned. She what? I'm just going off what's in the system. Rachel ended the call without saying goodbye. She stared at the screen like she could will the whole mess into undoing itself. Then her inbox pinged. One new notification. A rejection notice from the new carrier. Transfer denied. Please contact your current plan administrator. The words pulsed on the screen like a closed door. Lena's phone lit up again later that night. Not Rachel this time. Jason. Hey, Lena. Not trying to get in the middle, but this is really upsetting her. Please reconsider. At least let her explain. Lena stared at it, thumb hovering over the screen. The room was dark except for the amber glow of a floor lamp and the slow spin of the ceiling fan. She didn't type back. Instead, she opened a new folder in her email titled Attempts. She moved his message there without opening it. From the kitchen, Diane called out, Want me to bring the wine in here? Lena didn't answer right away. She looked out across the lake. The water was black now, barely distinguishable from the sky. Somewhere out there, a loon called once. Sharp, mournful, distant. "I'm good," she finally called back. But her eyes didn't leave the water. Not for a while. The law office smelled faintly of leather and lemon oil. It always did. Lena sat across from Miles Carter, her attorney of nearly 12 years, a thick manila folder resting between them on the polished walnut table. Miles adjusted his reading glasses and opened the folder slowly. "This is thorough," he murmured, flipping through the neatly labeled tabs. "Password logs, utility statements, backup documents. You even brought a flash drive." "I like paper trails," Lena replied. "They don't crash." She'd been up since 5, sorting and categorizing everything in her home office. The coffee hadn't made her feel more awake, just clearer, less patient. Miles slid one document out and held it up. "This one's still in your name. Internet, electricity, some shared cloud services, streaming accounts, password resets. You've been carrying a lot." "She's never bothered to change them," Lena said, "and I never thought to push it. Until now." He gave a slow, deliberate nod. "You want to legally remove your name from anything tied to her?" "Yes. But before that..." She handed him a second folder, thinner, with highlighted pages and stickies on each form. "I want to transfer the accounts that are technically dependent, utilities and subscriptions, into her legal ownership. Then, walk away clean. You realize the moment they shift into her name, she'll be on the hook for the full rates. No bundled benefits, no loyalty grandfathering." "I'm aware. She might not be." Lena's mouth twitched, something between pity and resolve. "That's not my responsibility anymore." Later that week, in the heart of Rachel and Jason's smart tech loft, a notification popped up on their wall-mounted tablet. "Service adjustment. Your new billing rate is $274.86 month. Effective immediately." Rachel frowned. "Wait, what?" She tapped through the message. "Why are we getting charged 3 times more for internet and streaming? Where's the loyalty bundle?" Jason looked up from his laptop. "I don't know. Did something expire?" She scrolled further. The account name had changed. Owner, Rachel Barrett. Previous owner, Lena Barrett. Transfer date, completed. Her mouth dried out. She pulled up the electric bill. Same. Her Spotify family plan? Gone. Jason had been booted mid-podcast. "She transferred everything into my name." Jason's expression flickered. "Wait, she can do that?" She did. Rachel started tapping furiously, trying to downgrade plans, reactivate bundles, anything. No options available without account tenure. A message blinked at the top of the screen. "Your service tier no longer qualifies for promotional pricing." Rachel stared at it. I didn't even know she still had access to all this. Jason stood slowly. "You mean, all this time we've been writing her name?" Rachel didn't answer. She just picked up the phone. Lena's phone buzzed twice before going silent again. She glanced at the screen. Jason. She let it ring out. Again. Voicemail. The third time, she powered the phone off without a word. Diane looked up from her crossword, her readers sliding down her nose. "Let me guess. The fiancé." Sounded angry. "Probably." Diane gave a wry smirk and set her pen down. "You're not going to call back?" "No." "Good." Diane leaned back in her chair, hands folded behind her head. "Because what you're doing right now, this isn't spite, it's subtraction. You're subtracting weight that never balanced." Lena leaned against the kitchen island, swirling the tea in her mug. "It still feels strange, like I'm watching her drown in water she poured herself." "You raised her," Diane said, picking up her crossword again. "Now you're unraising her." Lena's lips curled faintly, not a smile exactly, more like recognition. That evening, Rachel slammed a drawer in frustration. She didn't even warn me, Jason. She didn't say anything. She just cut it all off. Jason leaned in the doorway, arms folded. She did try. You didn't listen. Rachel froze. Excuse me? She left voicemails, sent cards. You posted brunch photos. His voice was calm, but each word landed with surgical weight. Rachel's eyes narrowed. Whose side are you on? I'm not picking sides, he said quietly. I'm just starting to see hers. And then he left the room. Rachel stood alone, breathing hard, surrounded by disconnected screens and a silence that was no longer quiet, but accusatory. Then her email chimed. Subject: Transfer confirmation from Legal Services, Carter and Associates. Finalization of financial disassociation, Lena Barrett. Her cursor hovered, trembling as she clicked it open. The attic of the old split level was dust-thick and hushed. Boxes stacked like silent witnesses against the sloped walls. Lena's breath curled in the air. It was colder up here, despite the unseasonably warm November day outside. She stood with gloved hands and a flashlight wedged between her neck and shoulder, rummaging through a box labeled Rachel, High School, College. She pulled out a photo album first, worn navy leather, the corners curled and sun-bleached. Inside, a Polaroid of Rachel holding a science fair trophy with a crooked grin and braces. Another of the two of them at graduation, arms linked awkwardly, Lena's smile tighter than she remembered. One from a birthday party, streamers sagging behind them, Rachel mid-eye roll. Not one had been asked for. Not even when Rachel moved into the loft with Jason. Not when Lena offered to help her pack. She'd waved her off then, said, I'm not really sentimental, Mom. It's all just old stuff. Lena closed the album slowly and set it aside. Next came a wooden jewelry box, her grandmother's. Rachel had once scoffed at it, calling it haunted chic. Inside were a pair of hand-painted porcelain earrings, a broken watch, and a letter written in fountain pen dated 1919. She traced the edge of the box for a moment, then tucked it carefully into a donation crate beside her. 1 of 5. 3 hours later, Lena stood in front of the Minneapolis Historical Society's small receiving annex, watching as a gloved volunteer carried the box of heirlooms inside with reverence. She signed the form. You sure you want to part with this? The woman asked, smiling gently. I'm not parting, Lena replied. I'm restoring. She turned before she could be offered a brochure. Back home, Diane was at the kitchen table surrounded by paper piles, folders, yellowing receipts, old school forms, Rachel's dance class rosters, old college lease agreements Lena had co-signed. The shredder hummed like a vengeful machine between them. This is deeply cathartic, Diane said, feeding a 2006 credit report into the blades. I should have done this after my second divorce. Lena opened another envelope and froze. Inside, on notebook paper folded twice and stained faintly with something like coffee, was a note in Rachel's familiar loopy handwriting. No matter where I go, I'll always call you first. Always. There was a small heart drawn next to Lena's name. For a second, Lena didn't move. The paper felt lighter than it looked, like memory itself. She could hear Rachel's voice again, younger, more naive, not yet hardened by ambition or detachment. That version of her, the one who left sticky notes on the fridge and called home during finals, felt like someone Lena used to know. She folded the paper back up carefully, walked to the fireplace, and held the corner against the flame. It caught immediately, curling in on itself like it didn't want to be remembered. Diane poured them both a splash of scotch without asking. What was it? Something she wrote in college, Lena said. A promise she didn't keep. Burn it? Lena raised her glass. Gone. They clinked. The sound was sharp, Clean. Satisfying. Miles away, Rachel's fingers flew across her phone screen, fury cracking through her composure. The legal notice had been too final, too silent. You're acting like I never mattered. Like I was some tenant you're evicting. Fine. Enjoy being alone. She stared at the screen, then sent it. A few seconds passed. No read receipt. Just a dull, unsatisfying delivered. Jason walked in from the balcony, his face still, unreadable. Another message? I'm not letting her rewrite everything like I wasn't part of it, Rachel said, voice sharp. She's not rewriting it, he said. She's just not archiving you in it anymore. Rachel's jaw tightened. Whose side are you on now? Jason didn't answer. He just left his phone on the counter and walked into the bedroom. Rachel stayed frozen where she stood. And across the lake, Lena's phone buzzed once, lit up briefly, and dimmed again, unopened. The screen froze mid-sentence. Rachel's face locked in an awkward half-smile, one brow raised, mid-pitch. On the other end of the call, her client stared back, unmoving, waiting for her to finish a sentence that had vanished into static. She jiggled the trackpad. Can anyone hear me? No response. She minimized Zoom, tried refreshing the browser, then the rotor dashboard. Nothing. The page loaded with molasses slowness before coughing up a red error. Network disconnected. Data service unavailable. No, 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 Rachel muttered, flicking her eyes to the system tray. The hotspot icon blinked erratically. She jumped to her feet. Jason! She called out, pacing in fast, uneven lines. The Wi-Fi's down again. My backup plan is capped. I can't get the call back. Jason appeared in the doorway, toothbrush still in hand. You want to use my phone? She hesitated, teeth grinding behind pursed lips. No. You sure? It's the same carrier. Just better coverage. I'm not borrowing from your mom's enemy, Rachel snapped. Jason stared at her. She's not... He cut himself off, swallowing the rest of the sentence. Okay. Fine. Rachel glared at her laptop, sweat prickling at her neck, the frozen Zoom faces still staring. One of the participants disappeared, then another. A client dropped a note in the chat before disconnecting. We'll reschedule when things are more stable. She felt the heat rise to her face, not just because of the tech crash, because the last few threads holding her carefully curated world together, status, polish, control, were snapping. Not loudly, quietly. Like frayed thread pulling slowly from the hem of a silk dress until the whole thing slumped off your shoulders. Across town, Lena stood at the mailbox at the edge of her gravel driveway, bundled in her thickest coat. The cold had returned overnight, sharp and indifferent. She pulled out a small stack of letters and walked back toward the house, her boots crunching faintly with each step. Inside, she sorted quickly, one envelope catching her eye. Simple white, typed return address. The logo of her old phone provider stamped in the upper corner. She slid it open with the smooth, practiced ease of someone who still opened mail with intention. Notice of number reassignment line previously assigned to Rachel Barrett. Status: number reassigned to new user as of 11/16. Lena stared at the line for a moment. No emotion rose at first. Just a click. A final switch flipped. She walked over to the filing cabinet near the kitchen desk, opened the bottom drawer, and slid the letter into a tabbed folder she'd labeled Closure in neat black ink. She didn't close the drawer right away. She just stood there, hand resting on the edge, the winter wind brushing lightly at the windows like it was trying to come in and make conversation. Behind her, Diane padded in, wearing fuzzy socks and carrying two mismatched mugs. You look like someone just won a war without firing a shot. Lena didn't turn. Got confirmation. The number's been reassigned. Diane raised her eyebrows and set the mugs down. Well, damn, that's like digital cremation. Lena smirked faintly. Diane sipped her tea. So, what are you doing now? Celebration? Eulogy? Revenge dance? Lena closed the drawer with a gentle click, then picked up her mug, still warm, and wrapped both hands around it. Nothing, she said simply. I'm just letting the silence be hers now. Back at the loft, Rachel stared at the little blinking exclamation point on her hotspot indicator. She'd tried refreshing the carrier portal 3 times, only to find the same message flashing back. This number is no longer available. She tossed the phone on the couch and sank down beside it, jaw clenched so tightly her ears ached. Jason returned from the hallway, paused in the doorway. "You okay?" he asked. Rachel didn't answer. Her phone buzzed once. Not hers, Jason's. She glanced at it. Email from Miles Carter. Subject: New document. Estate revision. Jason didn't move to check it, and Rachel realized, too late, that she wasn't just losing numbers and access in bundles. She was losing ground, permanently. The legal conference room was the same. Glass walls, walnut trim, the soft hum of climate control masking any trace of emotion. But the energy between Lena and Miles had shifted. No longer heavy with unfinished business. Today, it was crisp, settled. Miles glanced over his glasses, a fresh stack of documents laid out before him, each clipped and tabbed with quiet precision. "So this," he said, tapping the top page, "is the updated will. Final draft, ready to sign." Lena nodded. "Walk me through it one more time." He adjusted his cufflinks. Habit, not vanity. "First, your estate assets, home, investments, retirement savings, all designated to be split between the Girls in Tech Empowerment Fund and the Central Midwest STEM Scholarship Foundation." She allowed herself a small smile. "Good. I want it used while it still matters. No contingencies, no fallback beneficiaries. None needed." Miles flipped the page. "You've designated Diane Holloway as your medical proxy and executor." "She knows how to handle the mess if there is one," Lena said. "She's done it twice for other people already. And your daughter." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "I've left her $1, Lena said. "On the record, so it can't be contested." Miles hesitated. "It's legally sound. It also sends a message." "I know," she replied calmly. "She's ignored years of quiet ones. She'll hear this one." He placed the pen before her. "Then all that's left is your signature." Lena took the pen, felt the familiar weight of it in her fingers, and signed, line by line, page by page. When she was done, Miles gathered the stack and tapped the edges square. "You're sure you don't want to notify her?" "I'm sure," Lena said. "This isn't a warning. It's a completion." She stood, smoothing the sleeves of her sweater as she moved toward the window. The downtown skyline shimmered through the glass, and just below, a pair of schoolchildren in matching winter coats skipped past, giggling, their voices muffled by the pain. Behind her, Miles asked gently, "Do you want a copy for your records?" "I want you to send one to Diane," she said. "Tell her it's the emergency playbook." That night, the wind off the lake howled hard against the condo windows. Lena curled up in her reading chair, a thick quilt draped over her legs, and a glass of red wine balanced on the end table. Diane sat across from her, knitting something long and uneven. "You really went through with it?" Diane asked without looking up. "She's out," Lena said, flipping a page in her novel. Diane gave a low whistle. "Medical proxy, executor, inheritance, all scrubbed. That girl got more out of your phone bill than she will out of your will. She got enough chances." Diane stopped knitting. "Did it hurt?" "Not as much as it should have," Lena said. Then, after a pause, "That's how I knew it was the right time." They sat in companionable silence for a while, the kind that had nothing left to prove. Across town, Rachel's inbox chimed again. Subject, document access, Carter and Associates shared with Rachel Barrett. She opened it before she could talk herself out of it. Her name, in black and white, appeared only once, next to a line that read, "To Rachel Barrett, $1. No further claims shall be honored." Everything else was outlined with clinical finality. Lena's estate was being left to causes Rachel had never asked about, causes she'd mocked as sentimental giving. She blinked once, twice, then shut the laptop and pushed it off her lap with a clatter. Jason entered the room, holding a tea mug. "Another document?" "She cut me out," Rachel said, voice brittle. Jason didn't look surprised. "It's her right." Rachel stood up sharply. "Are you really going to keep defending this?" "I'm not defending anything," he said, "but for once, you're not the victim." Rachel turned away, jaw locked. Behind her, his phone buzzed again. She looked down and read the preview over his shoulder. From Miles Carter. Subject: Final filing. Estate sealed. Final. Sealed. Permanent. Rachel stared at the login screen, blinking. She entered her credentials again. Same result. Access denied. File not found under user profile. She hit refresh, then opened a new tab and tried the health provider's customer portal. Nothing. The shared plan that had included Lena, herself, and, by some legacy loophole, Jason, was gone. Her name no longer appeared under dependents, joint coverage, or emergency contacts. She opened the insurance chat support window and typed furiously. "Hi, I'm trying to access my group health plan. It should be under the Barrett Family Bundle." Typing. Then the response. "That account was updated last week. Only one name remains. Lena Barrett. You were listed as a dependent but have since been removed by the primary policyholder." She sat back in her chair, a hollow panic expanding behind her ribs. At her office, glass walls, exposed brick, soft hum of startup anxiety, Rachel buzzed through HR, pushing to re-enroll under the company's group plan. "We'd love to help," the HR rep said, voice syrupy with forced empathy. "But because your original application went through a transitional family waiver years ago, you'll have to pay the backdated onboarding fees before we can activate your policy." "How much?" Rachel asked, already bracing. $5,912, the rep said, without flinching. "Plus a $200 reinstatement processing fee." Rachel almost laughed. "Almost. That's absurd," she muttered. "I'm just the messenger," the rep said with a shrug. Rachel ended the call before she said something reckless. She closed the blinds in her office, dimming the light like it might mute the rising flood in her chest. She'd always considered herself immune to consequences, especially the domestic kind. Lena had always been the quiet parachute, invisible, reliable, and never thanked. Until now. That night, after another silent dinner with Jason, Rachel stood in the kitchen, scrolling her social feed, thumb moving without thought. Post after post of other people's curated lives, new babies, vacation sunsets, couples in matching sweatshirts. She opened the caption bar and stared at the blinking cursor. Then she typed, "Parents are supposed to love unconditionally. Remember that." She hit post without tagging anyone, knowing the people who needed to know would see it anyway. The likes came in quickly, but the comments hit faster. "Love's a two-way street." "Do you?" "Define unconditionally," asking for a friend. Maybe she finally loved herself more? Her stomach turned. She set the phone down, face first on the countertop. Jason walked in from the living room, his eyes catching the tension in her jaw. "Maybe you should just talk to her." Rachel didn't answer. She just poured herself a glass of wine, too fast, the neck of the bottle clinking against the rim. "You think a conversation would fix this?" she said finally. I think silence never did. The next morning, Lena was pruning the dormant hydrangeas by the lakefront when her landline rang. The only calls that came to that number now were from her dentist, Diane, or robocalls trying to sell her extended car warranties on a car she didn't own anymore. She dusted her gloves off on her jeans and picked up on the fourth ring. "Ms. Barrett," the voice said, bright and young. "This is Natalie from the Central Midwest STEM Scholarship Fund. I just wanted to let you know. Your legacy endowment made the front page of our newsletter and got picked up by a few education blogs. It's kind of going viral." Lena blinked. "Viral?" "We had a donor spot open up last minute, so we profiled yours. There's a pull quote that's really hitting. Something about how systems only change when the people holding them up decide to let go." There was a pause. Lena let the words settle. "We're already getting new interest from women applying for early tech mentorships because of your name alone." Lena walked slowly to the window as the lake shimmered, sunlight slicing across the surface in clean, clear lines. "That's good to hear," she said. "I thought you should know," Natalie added. "It's making a real difference." Lena hung up and stood in the quiet, then opened her file cabinet again and added a new folder. Signal returns. She slipped the scholarship letter inside. Outside, two teenage girls walked past with backpacks slung high and earbuds in, laughing at something private and light. Lena watched them until they disappeared down the path. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Rachel. Unopened. The drive up to Lena's lake house was longer than Rachel remembered. Maybe it was the way the road narrowed in November, trees stripped of their bravado, skies low and gray. Or maybe it was the silence between her and Jason, who hadn't offered to come along this time. She parked beneath the birch tree Lena used to hang bird feeders from. The house stood quiet and still, a picture too perfect to touch. Smoke wasn't curling from the chimney. Curtains were drawn. No motion from inside. Rachel stepped out, coat clutched tight around her, note folded in her back pocket. Her boots crunched over the gravel path as she approached the door. She knocked. Then again. She knocked harder, palm flat, each pound echoing back at her with increasing indifference. Still no sound from inside. She tried the doorbell, then leaned in, listening. Nothing. She circled to the side window, peeking in past the curtains. Neat living room. Quilted throw folded over the armrest, a mug left out on the side table. Everything in its place, but no one. Rachel stepped back and crossed her arms to keep the cold out, and the sinking in. A woman in a red puffer vest appeared on the sidewalk, holding a plastic bag and a tiny leash. The dachshund at her feet barked once. "You looking for Lena?" the woman asked casually. Rachel straightened. "Yeah, I'm her daughter." The woman's expression didn't shift, not with recognition or warmth, just a neutral squint. "She's not here. Left Friday. She goes off-grid every couple weekends. No phone, no email. Good for the soul, you know." Rachel forced a polite nod. "Right. Thanks." The woman smiled, more at the dog than her, and moved on. Rachel turned back to the door. A beat passed. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the folded note, smoothed it once over her hand, and tucked it into the mailbox. Her handwriting, once bubbly and bold, looked tentative now, as if the letters were trying not to offend. She stood there for a second too long, eyes scanning the stillness, hoping for a flicker of curtain, a creak of floorboard. Anything. But the silence didn't break for her. On Sunday evening, the wind picked up along the lake shore, rattling bare branches against the windows as Lena pulled into the driveway. The house was cold, the kind that lives in the walls. She clicked on the heat, then lit the fireplace, letting the warmth chase its way back into the room. Diane arrived an hour later, a grocery bag swinging from her arm and a scarf still wrapped around her neck. "You get any mail while you were gone?" she asked, toeing off her boots. Lena glanced toward the counter where the mail was stacked, neatly clipped. Just a couple utility statements and a flyer from that roofing company again. Diane walked over to the fireplace, crouching to warm her hands. Anything else? Lena shook her head. Nothing worth opening. Diane looked up, studied her for a second, then leaned back on her heels. Well, good, she said lightly. Junk mail. What Lena didn't know, what she wouldn't know, was that Diane had arrived a few hours earlier that day, using the spare key Lena still kept tucked beneath the flower pot. She'd stopped by to stock the fridge, toss out the stale bread, sweep the porch. And that's when she found it. A single folded piece of paper in the mailbox. No envelope. Name scrawled across the top. Mom. She'd opened it, read every word. It wasn't a confession, not an apology, just a string of fragments trying to pass as reconciliation. The kind of note someone writes when they're hoping the act of writing will count more than what's written. Diane had read it once, then again, then walked it to the fireplace and burned it. No dramatics. Just clean flame. Ash and gone. By the time Lena returned home, there was no trace, only warmth. Waiting. And Rachel, miles away, refreshing her inbox for a reply that would never arrive. Rachel's new number felt foreign in her hand. She stared at it, still not memorized, as if it belonged to someone else. Another version of herself? Not the one who'd spent the morning pacing from window to window, wondering if silence could collapse into something solid enough to stand on. The call log was empty. So was the inbox. Starting over looked a lot like standing still. She scrolled past Jason's name, past her assistants, past the group chat that had gone quiet since her social media post backfired. Then she tapped Lena Barrett, home. A contact she'd re-entered manually, digit by digit, with a lump in her throat she hadn't swallowed yet. The call rang twice, then clicked into voicemail. Rachel hesitated at the beep. Mom? She said, her voice tighter than she expected. I don't even know what I did to deserve this. Her breath caught, just for a second. I mean, if I did something, just tell me. Please. You don't need to go nuclear to get my attention. She paused. The silence on the line pressed back. I'm still your daughter, she added, a little softer now. That's supposed to count for something. She hung up before she could change her mind. Lena was outside, pruning dead growth from the winter-dulled garden beds, bundled in a fleece jacket and gloves. When the voicemail alert chimed from inside, she didn't flinch. She finished with the hedge clippers before walking in, her hands red from the cold. She saw the alert on the landline's blinking screen. New message. She hit play with the same calm she used to pay utility bills. Rachel's voice filled the kitchen. Older now, thinner, unfamiliar in its restraint. Lena listened all the way through. No interruptions, no facial expression. When it ended, she deleted it with a single press of her thumb. No folder, no saving. 2 days later, the phone rang again. Same number. Lena let it go to voicemail without hesitation. This time, Rachel's tone had changed. I don't know who you're trying to punish, but if you think this is helping anything, it's not. You're erasing me like I never mattered. Is that what you want? A beat. Then the click of disconnection. Lena didn't play that one. She just saw the alert, exhaled once, and pressed delete. The third message came at night. Lena was reading in bed, Diane asleep in the guest room, the wind slapping against the windows like something trying to get in. The phone buzzed again. Voicemail. Rachel's voice came through tired and acid-bitten. You've made your point. Congratulations. You win. Then quieter. But you're not better than me. You just left first. The message ended. Lena didn't react. She stared at the ceiling for a long while after, the room silent again. In the morning, Diane stirred awake to the sound of clippers outside. She padded to the kitchen in socks and peeked through the window. Lena was in the garden, snipping frost-bitten stems, sunlight streaking across her silver hair. Calm, focused, unbothered. Diane brought out 2 coffees a few minutes later and handed one over. More voicemails? Lena nodded. She's finding her voice finally. Diane tilted her head. Any plans to answer? Lena set the clippers aside and took a sip. I've got better conversations waiting for me out here. They stood in silence for a moment, the garden brittle but beautiful in its dormancy. Besides, Lena said quietly, voicemails are just echoes. You can't grow anything in echoes. Back in the city, Rachel stared at her call log. 3 voicemails, no reply, no read receipts. Just silence so complete it made her wonder if maybe her mother had never been there at all. Her hand hovered over the screen. She didn't call again. She opened her notes app instead and started typing. Something sharp, something public, something meant to sting. But her fingers froze over the keyboard, because for the first time she didn't know what to say. And Lena? Lena had already stopped listening. Rachel stood in the fluorescent glow of the urgent care lobby, the clipboard in her hand trembling just enough to betray her. The receptionist's eyes flicked from the ID to the computer screen, then back to Rachel. Sorry, she said, polite but impersonal. You're not listed on her file. Rachel forced a breath through her nose. I used to be. Well, the woman said, tapping her acrylics against the desk, you're not anymore. If she wants to authorize access again, she'll need to submit it in writing. She's my mother, Rachel snapped, sharper than she meant to. This is for her own safety. I should at least be listed for emergencies. The woman didn't flinch. I'm just following the policy, Ms. Barrett. Rachel stepped aside, pulse pounding in her ears. She tapped furiously into her health app. Nothing. No backup contacts, no alerts, no rights. She had been erased from every line of connection that used to tether her to Lena's life. She didn't wait around for more paperwork. She left. By the time she arrived at the phone store, she was running on fumes and caffeine. It was the same Midtown branch where it had all started. The line cancellation, the revelation. Everything Lena had set in motion with a single smile and just one line from now on. Rachel waited in line, trying not to wring her hands. When the rep finally waved her over, she barely registered the woman's face, until the badge came into focus. Amy. Short nails, green cardigan, same calm gaze. Rachel swallowed and forced a tight smile. I'm trying to recover access to an old account. It was a shared plan, but I need to get the recovery info so I can... Amy was already looking up the number. Then her eyes lifted slowly to meet Rachel's. You're Rachel Barrett? Rachel's smile faltered. Yes. Amy closed the tab on her screen with a practiced flick. I remember your mother. She came in herself to handle this. There's nothing left on file with your name authorized. The system's locked from third-party access. I'm not a third party, Rachel said, jaw tightening. In the system, you are. Rachel stared at her. There must be something. Password reset? ID verification? Amy folded her hands. I'm sorry. You don't have authorization. The words weren't cruel, just definitive. Rachel stood there, stunned, the din of customer chatter behind her fading to a dull, underwater hum. She nodded once, because dignity was all she had left, and walked out without another word. Jason was waiting in the car, eyes scanning his phone. When he saw her approach, he tucked it away. She slid into the passenger seat without speaking. Well? He asked quietly. Rachel shook her head, staring out the windshield. She blocked me out of everything. He watched her for a long moment, then said, not unkindly, maybe you really lost her. Rachel flinched barely, then turned her face toward the window. The sky was starting to dim. Lena sat alone on her porch as the sun dipped low across Lake Nokomis, painting the water in long strokes of copper and rose gold. A wool shawl hugged her shoulders, and a ceramic mug of herbal tea warmed her hands. No phone on the table, no inbox, no buzzes or dings or rings, only the sound of geese overhead, heading south. Only the steady rhythm of waves tapping the dock. Inside, the fireplace flickered in the window's reflection, steady, low, alive. Diane had gone home earlier that day, leaving behind a basket of fresh produce and a note. Be unbothered. You're good at it. Lena smiled at that, not bitterly, just warmly, like someone who had earned the right not to explain herself anymore. She looked out over the lake, the kind of look that wasn't waiting for anything, and behind her, tucked in the kitchen drawer beneath the silverware, sat the landline phone. Quiet. No blinking lights, no voicemails, no missed calls. Just peace. And miles away, in a parked car beneath the downtown skyline, Rachel opened her contacts app and stared at her mother's name. Grayed out. No linked profile picture. No saved number. For the first time in her life, the line wasn't just disconnected. It was gone. Rachel stood in the fluorescent glow of the urgent care lobby, the clipboard in her hand trembling just enough to betray her. The receptionist's eyes flicked from the ID to the computer screen, then back to Rachel. Sorry, she said, polite but impersonal. You're not listed on her file. Rachel forced a breath through her nose. I used to be. Well, the woman said, tapping her acrylics against the desk. You're not anymore. If she wants to authorize access again, she'll need to submit it in writing. She's my mother, Rachel snapped, sharper than she meant to. This is for her own safety. I should at least be listed for emergencies. The woman didn't flinch. I'm just following the policy, Ms. Barrett. Rachel stepped aside, pulse pounding in her ears. She tapped furiously into her health app. Nothing. No backup contacts. No alerts. No rights. She had been erased from every line of connection that used to tether her to Lena's life. She didn't wait around for more paperwork. She left. By the time she arrived at the phone store, she was running on fumes and caffeine. It was the same Midtown branch where it had all started. The line cancellation, the revelation. Everything Lena had set in motion with a single smile and a just one line from now on. Rachel waited in line, trying not to wring her hands. When the rep finally waved her over, she barely registered the woman's face. Until the badge came into focus. Amy. Short nails. Green cardigan. Same calm gaze. Rachel swallowed and forced a tight smile. I'm trying to recover access to an old account. It was a shared plan, but I need to get the recovery info so I can... Amy was already looking up the number. Then her eyes lifted slowly to meet Rachel's. You're Rachel Barrett? Rachel's smile faltered. Yes. Amy closed the tab on her screen with a practiced flick. I remember your mother. She came in herself to handle this. There's nothing left on file with your name authorized. The system's locked from third-party access. I'm not a third party, Rachel said, jaw tightening. In the system you are. Rachel stared at her. There must be something. Password reset? ID verification? Amy folded her hands. I'm sorry. You don't have authorization. The words weren't cruel, just definitive. Rachel stood there, stunned, the din of customer chatter behind her fading to a dull, underwater hum. She nodded once, because dignity was all she had left, and walked out without another word. Jason was waiting in the car, eyes scanning his phone. When he saw her approach, he tucked it away. She slid into the passenger seat without speaking. Well? He asked quietly. Rachel shook her head, staring out the windshield. She blocked me out of everything. He watched her for a long moment, then said, not unkindly, maybe you really lost her. Rachel flinched, barely, then turned her face toward the window. The sky was starting to dim. Lena sat alone on her porch as the sun dipped low across Lake Nokomis, painting the water in long strokes of copper and rose gold. A wool shawl hugged her shoulders, and a ceramic mug of herbal tea warmed her hands. No phone on the table, no inbox, no buzzes or dings or rings. Only the sound of geese overhead, heading south. Only the steady rhythm of waves tapping the dock. Inside, the fireplace flickered in the window's reflection. Steady, low, alive. Diane had gone home earlier that day, leaving behind a basket of fresh produce and a note. Be unbothered. You're good at it. Lena smiled at that. Not bitterly, just warmly. Like someone who had earned the right not to explain herself anymore. She looked out over the lake, the kind of look that wasn't waiting for anything. And behind her, tucked in the kitchen drawer beneath the silverware, sat the landline phone. Quiet. No blinking lights, no voicemails, no missed calls, just peace. And miles away, in a parked car beneath the downtown skyline, Rachel opened her contacts app and stared at her mother's name. Grayed out. No linked profile picture. No saved number. For the first time in her life, the line wasn't just disconnected. It was gone. The letter arrived on thick ivory paper, embossed with gold initials and legal ambiguity. Lena didn't bother reading it twice. She skimmed it in her kitchen, steam rising from a mug of green tea beside her. The phrasing was diplomatic, but the meaning clear. Rachel's attorney was testing the waters. A friendly inquiry regarding possible reconciliation, citing future asset concerns, with soft pressure about family, legacy, and fairness. Lena placed the letter beside the sink and stared out the window. The lake was starting to freeze around the edges. She didn't answer it herself. At Carter and Associates, Miles sat behind his desk in his signature gray suit, glasses low on his nose. His reply was 2 pages long, professional, cold, without being cruel. Attached was a scanned copy of the notarized will, the health proxy declaration, and the estate schedule showing Rachel's name listed once, and only once, for the amount of $1. He CC'd Rachel's lawyer, printed a hard copy for Lena's file, and closed the email with a single line. Per the client's instructions, this matter is considered resolved in full. No further outreach is required. He paused before hitting send, then sent it anyway. Rachel sat stiffly in the conference room of her attorney's office, hands clenched around a La Croix she hadn't touched. Her lawyer slid the estate documents across the polished table without looking her in the eye. This appears final, he said gently. It's airtight. There's no legal recourse. Rachel stared at her name on the page. $1. Not even cash. Just a legal placeholder. An insult masquerading as inclusion. Did she actually sign this? She asked, her voice dull. Not only signed, the lawyer said. Filed, witnessed, certified, it's locked. Rachel pushed her chair back and stood. I want to see her. I wouldn't recommend that, he said carefully. I didn't ask for your recommendation, she replied and walked out. The lake house was quiet again when the rental car pulled into the driveway. The same gravel crunch, the same birch tree, now bare. But this time, the porch light was on. Rachel knocked, the same rhythm as before. Only this time, the door opened. But it wasn't Lena. It was Diane, bundled in a sweater, sleeves rolled, reading glasses dangling from a cord around her neck like a warning sign. Thought you might show up, Diane said, stepping onto the porch. She closed the door firmly behind her. I told Lena I'd handle this one. Rachel swallowed hard. I'm not here to argue, No, you're here to spin something into an emotional loophole. That's what lawyers are for. Rachel bristled. You read the letter. Diane didn't blink. I burned the letter. Silence crackled between them. Then Diane pulled a folded sheet of paper from her back pocket. Plain, black text. Lena's handwriting. Neat. Measured. She asked me to give you this if you ever came looking for more. Rachel unfolded it. It was only one sentence. No further contact. This line is permanently closed. Rachel stared at it. Her mouth opened, closed. She wrote this? Every word. I just want to talk. She's done talking, Diane said, calm and immovable. She has spent years trying to be heard in your silence. You didn't notice until the volume got turned off. Rachel's hands trembled. You think this is fair? Fairness is a loop, Diane said. This is freedom. Then she stepped back inside and closed the door with finality. Rachel stood there, holding the paper like it might still change if she looked hard enough, but it didn't. The porch light clicked off. Later that week, Lena stood inside the donation center of a local women's shelter. The volunteer took the phone, her old one, the last device that had ever carried Rachel's voice. It's reset? The woman asked. Lena nodded. Factory settings, new SIM. Clean slate. We'll make sure it goes to someone who needs a lifeline. That's why I brought it. She walked out into the cold, leaving the past in a cardboard box behind her. Back at the lake house, a young girl with a shaved head and a small duffel bag in hand powered on Lena's old phone. It buzzed softly. Blank. New. No contacts. No missed calls. But a full signal. And for someone else, that would be enough. The community center buzzed with quiet energy. Folding chairs set in imperfect rows, a whiteboard smudged with notes about data literacy, emergency apps, and signal encryption. In the corner, a stack of unopened flip phones sat next to shrink-wrapped chargers and laminated instruction cards. Lena stood near the back, her name printed on a makeshift lanyard, Volunteer Mentor, Lena Barrett. She didn't wear it for recognition. She wore it because some of the girls needed to see a name that didn't ask anything from them. A group of 4 women, late teens to mid-20s, sat around her, heads bent over open phones. Okay, Lena said gently. This one doesn't have a browser, which means it doesn't track you. That's not fancy, but it's safe. And if someone you don't trust tries to call, this button right here blocks them without even ringing. A girl with a bruise just fading beneath concealer smiled faintly. You really used to work with this stuff? 32 years, Lena said. Started when phones still weighed more than newborns. Laughter broke through the room for the first time all afternoon. In the following weeks, word spread. The small pilot project Lena launched, prepaid phones for women escaping abusive homes, grew with quiet urgency. She partnered with shelters, bus stations, transitional housing programs. She met survivors with kids, survivors with nothing but a coat and a name they were trying to forget. She taught them how to disable GPS, how to set emergency codes, how to start over with just a number and a charger. And she listened. One morning, a local reporter came by, scribbling notes as Lena sat in the garden behind the center, legs crossed at the ankle, sipping from a thermos. You don't want to be quoted directly? The reporter asked. I want the story to be about the women who picked up the phone, not the one who gave it to them. Still, the piece went live a week later. Headline: Retired tech worker builds lifeline for others. Subhead: After cutting a connection of her own, Lena Barrett found a better signal. It ran small, local interest. But it traveled, shared among community advocates, printed on church bulletin boards, tacked to break room walls in emergency shelters. Eventually, it landed on a screen in Rachel's apartment. She paused when she saw it. Lena's photo tucked in the bottom corner, crouched beside a young girl tying her shoes, a blurred row of donated flip phones behind them. Rachel stared at it, thumb hovering over the share button. She didn't click it. She locked the screen and laid the phone face down on the table. Jason noticed. Not just the article, but the quiet pause afterward. The way Rachel blinked too long, then changed the subject. The way she hadn't spoken to Lena in months, and how every word spoken now only circled back to Rachel herself. A week later, the separation papers were on the kitchen table. No yelling, no scenes. Just clean ink and calm resolve. "I'll give you space to figure out who else you are," he said. Rachel didn't fight. She didn't ask him to stay. She didn't say much at all. The scholarship ceremony was held in the city library's old rotunda, red brick arches, a faint smell of history and lemon oil. Dozens of young women in business casual outfits filed in, clutching name tags and nervously fixing their hair. Lena stood at the edge of the reception hall, watching them bloom in real time. The STEM Foundation had officially renamed one of their access grants, the Barrett Signal Fund for Women Who Need to Be Heard, and help others do the same. She hadn't cried when she read the announcement, but she had saved the email. Diane arrived late, blaming traffic, holding a paper-wrapped bouquet of tulips and a purse full of peppermint candies. "You proud of yourself yet?" she asked, sliding beside Lena. Lena gave her a look. "That's not really the point." Diane handed her the flowers anyway. "Then let me be proud for you." They stood in the back while the keynote speaker read Lena's name aloud, twice. The room applauded. Lena didn't wave. She just nodded once, the way you do when something lands right where it belongs. Outside, it had started to snow. Early, soft. And miles away, Rachel opened her inbox and saw a shared newsletter from one of her old college groups. Subject: Women Making Impact in Tech. Read this one. She didn't open it. She closed the app and poured another drink. A letter arrived from a girl in Idaho, written in pen so faint Lena had to hold it up to the window to read. "I never thought someone like me would matter to someone like you. Thank you for the phone. I used it to call the shelter when I couldn't breathe anymore." Lena folded the letter slowly, hands steady, heart quietly rearranged. She placed it inside a shoebox already brimming with others. Some typed, some scribbled, some sealed with stickers or doodles in the corners. New names, new stories. Names that didn't hurt to say aloud. She labeled the box with a piece of masking tape. Signal received. That spring, the STEM Foundation sent another formal notice, this time with a certificate. The Barrett Signal Grant was now a permanent fixture of their annual fund, offering tuition stipends and digital literacy kits for girls in under-resourced communities. Lena opened the envelope in her garden, scissors still in one hand, dirt smudged across her jeans. She didn't go inside, just stood there in the sun, reading it once, then again, before pressing it gently against her chest like something sacred. Then she set it down and dug another hole in the earth. She was planting a pear tree that day, her first in decades. "Something that takes root and feeds," she'd told Diane the day before, when they picked it out together. "Not ornamental. Useful." Diane had grinned. "Just like you." Rachel left Minneapolis in the middle of April. No goodbye. No forwarding address. No final post. Jason found a box on the kitchen table with his name on it. 2 keys and a folded note with a single line. "Don't let this become a story you tell yourself to feel better." He never replied. Her LinkedIn went quiet. Her Instagram vanished. Her startup profile listed her as no longer affiliated. She didn't reach out to anyone, not even the friends who had once orbited her like satellites, taking their cues from her gravity. She became, for all intents and purposes, a blank space. Back at the lake house, the pear tree began to bud. Lena watched it every morning, her coffee steaming, the sky just beginning to thaw. The tree stood where an old garden hose used to coil like a forgotten regret. Now it stretched toward the light without asking permission. One afternoon, a girl from the mentoring program stopped by with her little sister, dropping off a thank you card. Lena offered them lemonade, and they sat on the porch, knees tucked up under their chairs. "You remind me of someone," the older girl said, glancing at Lena. "Like a mom. But not the kind that makes you feel small. The kind that makes you want to build something." Lena chuckled, brushing a leaf off the table. "Mom-like," she echoed. "I'll take it." The younger sister nodded solemnly as if approving the title. Later that night, Lena walked to the back room where her landline still sat in its cradle, covered with a dust cloth she hadn't bothered to remove in months. She didn't turn it on. Instead, she picked up her cell, the new one, the private one, and opened the voicemail settings. Her current greeting was a generic tone. She hit record. Her voice was calm. Sure. Warm, but unyielding. "Hi, this is Lena. If I love you, you already know how to reach me. Everyone else, take care." She hit save. Then, after a pause, she powered the phone off. Not in bitterness, in peace. Outside, the pear tree shimmered in the late sunlight, leaves glossy with new growth. The wind shifted, light and forgiving, brushing against the house with soft insistence. Lena stood at the window watching it dance. She didn't think about Rachel anymore. Not as a wound, not even as a daughter. Just as a chapter that taught her the difference between keeping quiet and choosing silence. And somewhere in a town whose name Lena would never learn, Rachel scrolled through her empty contact list, the cursor blinking like it was daring her to fill it with someone who'd answer. She didn't. And Lena? Lena turned from the window, lit a candle, and smiled to herself as the light filled the room. She stopped calling. I built a better connection without her.